Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. On this channel we post direct tips, unboxings, book hauls, book reviews and the occasional vlog. And today I have another book review for you, and it is my second ever Brandon Sanderson read, and that is Tress of the Emerald Sea, which is a Cosmere novel. This is one that came up in my quarter 4 TBR job back in 2025, and I really enjoyed it. I did prefer Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, however this is still good and does have a little bit of Pratchett-esque in there. I do know Brandon Sanderson was a Terry Pratchett fan. As always with my book reviews, I'll read you guys the blurb first. Before we get into that, don't forget, if you like what you see, to subscribe to this channel. Your continued support means a lot, so thank you guys so much. Blurby blurb. The #1 New York Times and Sunday Times best-selling author Brandon Sanderson introduces you to his Cosmere universe with a rollicking, riveting standalone tale that will appeal to fans of The Princess Bride. The only life Tress has known on her island home in an emerald green ocean has been a simple one, with the simple pleasures of collecting cups brought by sailors from faraway lands and listening to stories told by her friend Charlie. But when his father takes him on a voyage to find a bride and disaster strikes, Tress must stow away on a ship and seek the sorceress of the deadly Midnight Sea. Amid the spore oceans where pirates abound, can Tress leave her simple life behind and make her own place sail in a sea where a single drop of water can mean instant death. This does have reviews on the back. Book list says an original fairy tale, and Kirkus starred review says engrossing world building, appealing characters and a sense of humour make this a winning entry in the Sanderson canon. It is a really beautiful book, A, because green is my favourite colour, but also if you look closely, our main protagonist is carrying a cup there in front of her, and I just like that, what's the word, dedication to the actual story within this book. This, for me, it definitely feels a little bit like a fairy tale, but also like with Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, Brandon Sanderson sort of reads like a fantasy / science fiction author, and this is no exception to that. The idea of these different seas is very sci-fi-esque, but the story itself is very fairy tale fantasy, and I do love that mix with Brandon Sanderson. Like with all my book reviews, I'll go through my quotes from this book first. Before we get into my overall review, I will give you a spoiler alert warning if I feel any spoilers are coming up. This is a tale about people who are both what they seem and not what they seem. Simultaneously, a story of contradictions. In other words, it is a story about human beings. In this case, Tress wasn't your ordinary heroine, in that she was in fact decidedly ordinary. Indeed, Tress considered herself categorically boring. She liked her tea lukewarm, she went to bed on time, she loved her parents, occasionally squabbled with her little brother, and didn't litter. She was fair at needlepoint and had a talent for baking, but had no other noteworthy skills. The description of Tress there just is so Pratchett-esque for me, and it just made me giggle. Page 8. Other girls often mentioned how they weren't like everyone else, and after a while Tress figured that the group everyone else must include only her. The other girls were obviously right, as they all knew how to be unique. They were so good at it, in fact, that they did it together. I'm going to leave that there. Page 76. She'd thought he would lack dexterity due to his fingers, which looked like they'd each been broken in several places, then allowed to heal without splints. Yet he managed quite well. Some actions took more effort, and his hands did tremble, but he was obviously capable, even if he had to do things differently from other people. This was great representation for someone with a physical disability, and I liked how it doesn't stop him doing anything, but shows reasonable adjustments and ways that he can do things differently to still do what everyone else does. So it's really good representation. Page 89. It was a mixed crew, with a variety of ethnicities and nearly as many women as men. That wasn't uncommon in the Four Seas. You took whoever was willing. Sexism interfered with profits. Agreed? I then have a quote which I honestly can't actually remember what page it's from. I've put page 8 ? If you wish to become a storyteller, here is a hint. Sell your labour but not your mind. Give me 10 hours a day scrubbing a deck, and oh, the stories I could imagine. Give me 10 hours adding sums, and all you'll have me imagining at the end is a warm bed and a thought-free evening. Life advice that I have definitely done wrong. My job definitely involves my brain. Oops. Chapter 24. We hunt for bravery, cleverness, heroism, and we find no shortage of such virtues. Legends are silly with them. But the person who is willing to reconsider their assumptions, the hero who can sit down and reevaluate their life, well now, that is a gemstone that truly glitters, friend. This again it is definitely Brandon Sanderson, but it also feels like he's talking about the heroes that he himself writes and also that Pratchett would write. They are normal people, but also people who think, which is something that a lot of fantasy novels don't leave a lot of time for the protagonists to do. They often just barge in there, swords raised. Less of the reevaluation and working it out. Page 206. The human species does need a certain amount of foolhardiness. Without that, people would have been too reasonable to do frightening things, like venture close to that very hot orange stuff that turns wood black and makes Thog's beard smoke. But evolution is not a precise mechanism, and it has resulted in a certain number of people in the population with more nerve than neurons. Spore sprouting was only the latest in an increasingly shiny set of activities designed to neatly and violently cull such individuals from the gene pool. This is sort of a nod to adrenaline junkies and to people who, risk their lives to achieve something or discover something. And I loved the Pratchett-esque way, of referring back to Thog's beard smoke. There is a short story by Terry Pratchett which goes into the caveman discovery of fire, and also the culling such individuals from the gene pool. Beautiful. Page 218. Please tell me you asked Ulam about me. Tress blushed more deeply. You did, answered Perrington. What did he say? I didn't really understand his explanation, Tress replied. It was something about the shape of the guns and cigars for some reason. Freud's theories of dreaming about sex and everything. So this is in regards to Anne, who is one of our characters who is just obsessed with guns, even though she can't aim very well. And it is a discussion that Tress had with Ulam, who is the ship's doctor, who is also an alien, who kind of links to the other books in the Cosmere novels. We do have a recurring character who is in Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, where he is a statue used as a coat rack. In this, he is a character who's sort of a bit mad. Page 237. She sent a Doug to fetch one from her quarters. It wasn't particularly detailed. None of the maps of the Midnight Sea are. Fortunately, the shape was roughly correct, since all the seas are basically pentagons. Is this sea based on Settlers of Catan? That's a question for you all. Comment down below if you think it is, or also if you think it isn't. To me, it really feels like it's based on Catan. Also, sent a Doug. Now, this is quite fun. Because on a ship, there's quite a vast crew. But Brandon Sanderson, instead of naming all the crew, making you remember all these people, or little in the amount, all the crew that you don't necessarily need to know too much about is called Doug. And I found that a really fun writing technique. Brandon Sanderson, his writing voice for me is as a narrator, and it does interrupt the story for me somewhat. It's not my favourite method of writing, however, it is humorous. Page 291. Don't wake me up unless death has shown up, nails in his eyes. Even then, see if you can stall. This is Tress when she's exhausted, and it does feel very Pratchett-y. Page 297. We want to imagine that people are consistent, steady, stable. We define who they are, create descriptions to lock them on a page, divide them up by their likes, talents, beliefs. Then we pretend some, perhaps most, are better than we are because they stick to their definitions while we never quite fit ours. Truth is, people are as fluid as time is. We adapt to our situation like water in a strangely shaped jug, though it might take us a little while to ooze into all the little nooks. Because we adapt, We sometimes don't recognise how twisted and comfortable or downright wrong the container is that we've been told to inhabit. We can keep going that way for a while. We can pretend we fit that jug, awkward nooks and all. But the longer we do, the worse it gets. The more it wears on us, the more exhausted we become, even if we're doing nothing at all. Because simply holding the shape can take all the effort in the world, more if we want to make it look natural. I absolutely adored that description of humans, and also it sort of was really reminiscent to me of neurodivergence and masking as well, and how exhausting that is. And the idea that, if you love something, you are allowed to fall out of love with it. You are allowed to change and grow and develop. People shouldn't always hold you to, oh, well, that was your favorite when you were little, or you used to be like this. People change, and that's okay. My second to last quote: I've discovered that it's all right to need help, so long as you've lived your life as the kind of person who deserves to be rescued. Thank you, but also sadly, but I liked the way Brandon Sanderson is telling you it's absolutely 100% okay at any point in your life to need help. He's not condoning in this hurting others by saying as long as you've lived your life as the kind of person who deserves to be rescued. Everyone has the right to help and needs help at times, but the nod to obviously don't hurt others and things like that is also good. Spoiler alert, just for the last quote. Skip to this time here to avoid it. Spoiler alert. And my final quote is from the epilogue, and that is: Tress walked to the rail and took a sip from her cup, one with a butterfly, which had obviously been glued back together after being shattered into many pieces. The captain didn't mind the breaks. Cups with chips or dings or even cracks and stories, she particularly liked the one this cup told. I love that nod back to the very beginning of the book and also the cup. And that's it for my quotes from this book. So now for my overall book view. As I said, this is a fantasy that also reads like a sci-fi, and I do really love Brandon Sanderson's mixture of science fiction and fantasy. I did find my mind wandering a bit when I read this book. I'm not sure why, because it is written extremely well. The story is lovely, the characters are well defined, but it wasn't gripping for me, whereas the Yumi and the Nightmare Painter felt gripping. It is one that I do want to reread to see if a second time my mind still wanders or not. It reminded me a lot of Terry Pratchett, which I enjoyed. What I also liked is this does have a twist at the end, and it's one that I did not guess, which is really good because I do tend to guess twists and plots a lot, so I was very happy this one didn't. For my overall review, out of 10 marks of 10, for enjoyment I gave it 7. Writing style 10, plot 10, world building 10, characterization 10, representation 10, and originality 10. Overall, I gave this book 4.5 stars out of 5. It was a very enjoyable read. It just seemed to be missing something, and I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the narrator feeling like they butted in a lot. I don't know if it was... it was high stakes, but at the same time felt low stakes. It is a cozy read. I'm not sure, but I've given it 4.5 stars. I would recommend it. And that's it for this book review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed what you see. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. If you'd like to see it as soon as I upload, click that little bell down below. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr. I post my bookish pictures as well as my own tips and unboxings on there. And thanks for watching, guys. Bye!